Hey everyone, Margarita here. This is part 16 of my severe carbon monoxide poisoning, initially left untreated. And I'm going to continue to go over some of these symptoms here. I believe the next one on the list is watery eyes. I was experiencing profusely watering eyes in the building that caused my severe carbon monoxide poisoning. And it was going on for quite some time. I'd say close to a year. And I had mentioned this to several other people who were there, and nobody mentioned that they were ever experiencing that. And I was sneezing repeatedly at the same time, like an excessive amount at once, without actually being sick. And I noticed several other people that were sneezing in that same manner, but maybe didn't have the watery eyes, because we had actually talked about this. And this is before I ever knew anything was wrong. So my watery eyes continued on for years until I'd reached a certain point in treatment where a certain amount of the carbon monoxide was removed from my brain, because the majority of it does build up in your brain. So I'd say it was at least a year into treatment before that symptom started to go away. So I was stuck like that for a couple of years, at least 2-3 years. So I guess once you have enough treatment, oxygen treatment and whatnot, and it starts to become removed, that symptom will go away. I also had quite a bit of pressure in my head, in my face, in my eyes. It stayed that way for years on end. I believe it was about 3.5 years it stayed that way. It felt like I had a broken nose, like a line across my nose from all of the pressure and all of the damage internally. That stayed that way for about that same amount of time as well. And if I do have a significant re-exposure or re-injury, that feeling will come back. It doesn't take as long to remove, but it will come back if enough particles load up into my open brain tissue that is still currently open. Now, I had a lot of vision problems as well. I seem to not have peripheral vision on both sides for years. I think it went on for at least 2 or 3 years that way. And then I saw black spots, almost as if you're holding up Swiss cheese to your eye and you're just missing spots. That went on for about that same amount of time as well. And driving at night, all I could see, all the lights on the oncoming traffic or traffic lights themselves, they would blend together so extravagantly. It was very hard to see. I had to wear sunglasses at night while driving in order to get that problem under control. I could barely drive at all for that 3-year period, and I was forced to. I had no choice, or we weren't going to live. So I did have to drive. I was in a very extreme state, and at no time should I have ever been driving. But I did mostly drive at night and was primarily one of the only vehicles on the road at that time, except for when I was treating during the day. I was in some significant traffic until COVID happened. Then I was the only vehicle on the road again. So I did have all of those issues. It wasn't just that, but the amount of damage to my brain and how many inches of space were between my brain and my skull and the amount of brain sagging I had going on. I could not stand up or sit up for very long. It's very taxing doing such a thing. It's extremely taxing on the brain, doing any tasks like 5 to 10 times more than a regular person trying to complete that same task. So that went on for quite some time. Those vision problems did eventually begin to clear. And each time I went to the eye doctor, because I wear contacts, I go about every year, I told them what had been going on, and no one had mentioned anything about my vision changing, or saw any damage related to what I was talking about until this most recent visit, which was almost a year ago. They could somehow tell that I could see black spots still from time to time, like floating black spots, which that was not a thing initially. That I think just started in the last 2 years or so. So prior, there was no other damage that was visible to any eye doctors. But eventually, once I treated enough, the peripheral vision did come back, and those missing black spots in my regular vision looking forward came back on that all came back on its own once I reached a significant point of treatment. I did have quite a bit of trouble driving. It's basically due to the brain injuries, how taxing it was, how extreme the brain injuries were. It was taking me 6 hours just to get from my bedroom upstairs to my living room downstairs, and another 2 hours to get from the couch and into my vehicle in the driveway, and another 45 minutes before I could drive off. So I stayed that way for several years as well. It was very hard to drive. I could only make one trip per day, and I couldn't go further than, I believe it was around 40 to 50 miles. I don't even think it was 50. And it took, I was already under treatment before I even attempted to go that far. I had to have my ex drive me to the first 8 treatments. I remember that, because it was not possible for me to even get that far. And really, I couldn't be doing anything. And because of my brain sagging and the amount of taxing on my brain and the amount of severe pain, I really couldn't drive anywhere. I didn't go anywhere I didn't have to. And one little breath of carbon monoxide at that time was extremely lethal to me. So I couldn't even get in the wrong vehicle or behind the wrong vehicle for one breath. One breath would have me incapacitated for days, if not a week or longer. So I didn't go anywhere except for where I absolutely had to go. And even then, it would take me all day to get out the door just to get to that one place. So if I had to go somewhere, I basically had to get to treatment is what it was. So I had to get to treatment. And at one point, I did have to get to work a couple of times a week. And it was a pretty, it was about 30 miles maybe. I would have to pull over, and I could not work. It was an illusion because of the way I looked, and nobody knew anything was wrong. I could barely stand up. I could barely string sentences together, and at no time should I have ever been working or attempting to even drive there. But what I did was, it took everything in me. I'd have to lay here all week long and do nothing else. I couldn't do one other thing other than lay in the bathtub for hours prior to going to work those 4, get myself there, barely get myself back. And the days that I treated was basically Monday through Thursday until COVID happened. And then I would work Friday and Saturday late at night for 4 or 5 hours. And then Sunday I would basically just break and lay here. And then once I reached a certain point, about a year into treatment, that's when I got Charmaine involved. So she's the main mental health professional that is still involved today. All of those other ones that I was seeking help with, I ended up getting rid of them fairly quickly, so none of them matter. But that was pretty much my schedule until COVID happened, and then it was just treatment 5 days a week only. For about 16 months, I stayed off work from COVID for 16 months. I got the full pay to stay home, and that's how I went about that. But I had a significant problem driving. At no time should I have ever been driving, but I had no choice, or we would not be alive today. We would have been gone a long time ago. So what I would do is I would just, if I had to go somewhere during the day, even if it was 5 miles away, I'd have to pull over and fall in and out of consciousness, and I'd have to pack enough stuff for the baby to make sure that if we had to lay there strapped in the vehicle for an hour or two, or until the worst part of the symptoms would subside, not that they ever subsided, because my symptoms were very extreme and very continuous it was 3 years, very extreme. So the symptoms never stopped. Very extreme brain swelling, neurologic pain, brain sagging, throbbing. Every exhaled breath made a throbbing, tight sensation on that back left side. Every exhaled breath. So to live that way for that long, it's very extravagant. It's very intolerable, and you actually have no quality of life whatsoever. So I had 0% quality of life it was about 3.5 years. And even then, there's been periods of time since then where there's still been periods of time with 0 quality of life, because I've been through numerous large spills and situations and setbacks and re-exposures, re-injuries. So I've had a couple of good months, a couple of times only during all of this. But basically 0 quality of life. You just have to get to where you need to go and get yourself back. But it's an illusion because people are judging you on what you look like. No one realizes that you're that injured, or you shouldn't be standing or walking or anything. So I did manage to do those things, and that's how I went about it. I went about it in the best way that I could with the tools that I was given and what I had to work with. That's how I did things. Now, I don't recommend driving anywhere if you don't have to. Most people have a support system, and so they would be driven to treatment by someone from their support system, but I literally had nobody. The people around me were not even acknowledging that an injury had even occurred, and they were being pumped up full of delusions by my mother in the background, not in front of me, because my dad had a separate relationship with me and my children and would take my 2 older ones back to his house with him from time to time. So once my mother figured out I was injured, she began pumping everybody up full of delusions, just repeating delusions about me and what they think they saw going on in my home. When really it was something completely different. So that caused a lot of problems, let's just say. And so there wasn't anybody who even realized something had happened to me. There was literally nobody. I was just laying here knowing that the only way out of this was to lay here, do nothing, get to work those couple of nights, and get myself back before I became incapacitated, which would happen each time. And I'd lay out all week incapacitated from just that little bit of functioning for those couple of nights. I literally couldn't do anything else. Couldn't do laundry, couldn't do dishes. None of that stuff happened for 4 to 5 years. So that's how I held things together. And my older kids had to help out around the house. It was mostly my older son. And at one point I had my lady working for me for about 1.5 years. And then I had my cousin working for me for a little over 1 year as well once I moved down to Ohio. So I had help along the way at some point, but in the most extreme part of the injury, I had no support system whatsoever. I had no one to advocate for me. I couldn't string sentences together. I couldn't drive. No one was even comprehending that there was even an injury. So I did what I could. I knew if I didn't do those things that we weren't going to live, and it took everything in me to do those things. And I literally just laid here with no quality of life. So I'll get more into some of that no quality of life later down the line, but I'm going to continue on with some of these symptoms. I did have a sensory hypersensitivity, all senses, all 5 senses, like sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, all of it. Even like a spiritual sense of hypersensitivity. I don't even know how to describe it, but everything was hypersensitive, basically. I've basically been laying here in silence in my home since the day of the injury, and it's been 7 years, and I still lay in my home in silence. I just got a TV a couple months ago, and it's really only due to other people's comfort, because I owned a couple TVs. I don't even turn them on. There's no point. My brain needs complete silence to rest. I spend quite a bit of time still incapacitated and resting, especially because I don't have continuing treatment right now. So treatment's on a pause. I do need future treatment. There's no more money. It's all self-pay. I'm now under Chapter 13 bankruptcy, and I've spent $165,000 out of pocket. Now, I would be further ahead in my recovery, but I've been significantly re-injured, some of those times intentionally, due to other people's jealousy, envy, actions against me, completely out of my hands. This is other people causing this for me. So I still have that problem where I do have to spend quite a bit of time incapacitated. Sometimes it's 40 to 60% of my time that I'm awake, or sometimes it's even 100, depending on any re-exposures or re-injuries. So I don't have a TV that I usually turn on. I do have one here now, but I rarely ever turn it on or watch anything. And it's been that way for years now. It does not bother me. I have, like I said before, 2 to 4 times the amount of things on my plate than I can handle. And I'm mostly juggling very important paperwork, or filming these videos, or taking care of this situation or that situation, or this crime or that crime, because there's been a lot of crimes and situations that have come out of my injury, especially with my deranged mother in the background committing all of these crimes while I'm going through all of this and creating problems for me, and she uses other people and agencies to do it. So that is a very big problem. These sensitivities though, the taste thing, it is very painful. It was very extremely painful in the beginning. I'd say at least the first 6 to 12 months, maybe a little longer. Hearing thing, I mean, we're 7 years in, it's still a problem. The scent thing, that is still a problem, although I'd say it's probably been reduced by about 50%, because we could not have anything scented at all, not even one breath. And I know kids with autism have the taste problem, the hearing problem. That's why they have the headphones, the noise canceling headphones. It's because their brains are injured. They are neurotoxic. It's not from carbon monoxide, but they are neurotoxic, and it has the same effects. So same thing with the tags on their shirt. A lot of autistic kids get irritated with the tags on their shirt. That's why, because it has to do with touch, it has to do with sight, it has to do with sound. All those things are involved for anybody who's neurotoxic for any reason, not just carbon monoxide poisoning. So yeah, some of these are still issues. However, the majority of them have been significantly reduced now that I have had several years of treatment. And I do expect them to be reduced a little more once I do have more treatment in the future. But I have had several other brain injuries. So I think that plays a role in the setback and why it's still so significant to this day. Because when your brain is having all that sound and all this light and all these people are yelling or talking loud or talking over each other, there's all this activity and action, people are running, and your brain can't handle that. And that's just, I'm just saying brain injury alone. That's not even it is the carbon monoxide. It's both. It's separate and it's together. So those are problems, but other people are ignorant to my condition, and anyone else dealing with that as a result of a brain injury or a poisoning or someone who's neurotoxic. Most of the rest of the world is ignorant to those issues. Even if I sit here and try to explain myself repeatedly, no one even hears what I'm saying, or they don't comprehend what I'm saying, or they think it's a joke, or it's not a joke. It's a problem, because then it makes it so I can't do other things, and then I basically have to lay there and do nothing. So, be compassionate if you are dealing with someone or a loved one and you're trying to take care of them, and you have, let's say, small children, and you're trying to help the person who's injured. It's going to be a problem, because you can't have screeching, screaming, crying. It makes matters worse. It's a very serious issue. And it's very frustrating, and it's part of the reason I've had to remove a lot of people from my life. And I spend a lot of time alone. And I don't have a problem with that. It's what's needed. Otherwise, I'm not going to be okay, because then it makes you irritable. It makes your head hurt more. It makes your brain swell up and down. There's all these issues. So, something to be mindful of if you're trying to help someone in that situation. Try to help them maybe without small children around. If you can get a babysitter and you're trying to help them, it's going to be more irritating, and you're probably not going to be much help to that person if you have to bring your small children around the person you're trying to help. Same with old people. I noticed, that's an issue with a lot of the elderly people as well. But yeah, quite a few hypersensitivities there. Just expect every sense to be out of whack, basically. And I'm going to cut that one right there, and I'll be back with some more of these symptoms. Thanks. Bye.